Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Portico. We're so glad that you're here. Let's stand and sing together as we begin worship. Take a moment, find somebody you haven't met before, and say hello. that the highest would welcome. I was lost, and He brought me in. His love.
inside out, Lord. Let justice and grace
consume me from the inside out. Lord, let justice and praise come my day. You love me from the inside out. Everlasting, your light is shining all around me. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all day. And the cry of my heart is to bring you praise from the inside out of my soul. Cries out from the inside out, Lord, my soul cries out. Amen. We're going to read a passage from Jeremiah now. Thus says the Lord, stand by the roads and look and ask for the ancient paths, where the good way is, and walk in it, and there find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk in it. Jeremiah 6:16. Y'all can have a seat.
How's it going, eh? I'm trying to be more Canadian because then it convinces people that I really am from Minnesota. Otherwise, people don't really get it. They're like, Minnesota, what's that like? I'm like, imagine Canada, but not quite Canada. Like, imagine cold, but not quite Canada. And they don't really get it. So mostly when I meet people now and they're like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, oh, it's going really good, eh? You see the moose in the road? Oofda. So, and then people think it's hilarious, and then so I just feed into it, and then they're like, man, I didn't know you guys were much like Canada. I'm like, no, we're not Canada. We are definitely not, don't ever call us Canada. We are not Canada. We are Minnesota. Hey, my name is Aaron Shaw. I'm one of the pastors here at Portico. I'm super thrilled that you're here. If you are between the ages of 12 and 29, I'm your pastor. I'm the pastor of student ministries here, and so I kind of oversee a large swath of you youngins, and I love to hang out with you. If you don't know me or you haven't spent any time with me and want to connect, we'd love for you to come up after the service, come talk to me. I'd love to get coffee, just get to know your life, get to know you a little bit more. We'd love to do that. Now, down to business. In the last 2 weeks, or just I guess last week and this week, we've been in a two-part series that I created called Production, Consumption, and the Gospel of Busyness. I came up with that title by myself. Isn't that great? It was super cool. I thought it was provocative. And the reason that I wanted to do it was because I wanted to hit on a really, really, really interesting thing about our culture, the air that we kind of breathe in our culture, which is one of consume, produce, and stay busy. And one of the things that I found out was that if there's kind of a cultural motto for America in 2019, it would be stay nervous and stay busy. Stay nervous and stay busy. Or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's that you're overconnected but underheard. And as we kind of turn the page from 2018 to go to 2019, I thought it was so appropriate for us to be able to take a look at what the Christian Sabbath and what rest is actually supposed to be. And so I developed this around the idea of kind of coming out of my struggles with what is Sabbath, what is rest. If you were here last week, you kind of heard my story of working in ministry the first year that I was really doing full-time vocational ministry, running like 70-hour weeks, leading like 5 different Bible studies, basically doing any and all ministry that I could possibly get my hands on, and it was exhausting. It got to a point where I had went 43 days without a day off. And finally, one of the pastors pulled me aside and said, I don't want to see you until next week. And then I took some time to be able to actually sit back and ask myself, what does it mean to Sabbath? What does it mean to rest? How does God actually command us as Christians to rest? And why do we rest? And so that began a 4-year journey. It leads us to now. And so the disclaimer is that if you were here last week was all theology about what is rest, how do we think about it. This week is going to be application heavy. So if you're kind of bummed, you're like, dang it, I wanted theology. Go back and listen to last week. If you were last week and that was still disappointing, I'm sorry. I'll probably be back up here at some other point, or Chris will come up and preach more theology to you. But today's going to be application heavy. So if you're excited about application, how do we do this? How do we actually rest? I'm going to walk through and we're going to talk through that. I'm really excited to bring you that. So, how many of you, we're going to do a poll, a really fast poll before we start. How many of you would characterize your life as busy? You can go ahead and put your hand up. Safe space, you're in church. Yeah, look at all of you. Okay, how many of you just don't care? And how many of you hate raising your hands in church? A couple of you. Well, that's a lot more than last service. Oh my. All right, you guys are a tough crowd. The point is that our busyness, though, as busy as all of our lives are, and we would all say that we're busy based on that really short, reliable survey, is that our busyness is far more than just busyness. The point is that our busyness is more than just a work problem. It's a fear problem. It's actually a shame problem. And fear problems always root themselves in misplaced truth about your identity of who you are and who your God is. Our enamorment with consumption and production is veiled in busyness, and it's a badge that we love wearing because it signals to others that we're needed and we're important. And the reality is that we're all busy, but we all want to think, oh, I'm so important. I have so many things going on. I'm so busy. But yet we're all busy. We're all in that same space. And so the importance of, wow, look at how much I have going on. Look at all the stuff I have. I'm so important. I'm so needed. I'm so wrung out. It's like we're all like that. We're all exhausted. We're all tired. We're all weary. It no longer becomes a badge of honor. It becomes a badge of, I need help. Because something's wrong. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Which is why it's so important that we look at this idea. Because we're made for more. If you were here last week, I talked about this idea of brick making with the Israelites in the Exodus account in Egypt, how the Israelites were constantly making bricks for Pharaoh, building his empire of consumption and production, and they were busy all the time worried about building this city. And eventually it comes to a point where God kind of steps in and says, you're made for more than brick making. You're not supposed to be under Pharaoh. You're going to be under me. I will lead you out, and I will be your God. I will set you free. You will not be restless. You will be restful. Come to me. And God brings them out and sets on for the world stage a restful God and says, come and worship me. You are no longer under the economy and enterprise of endless production, consumption, and anxiety. You are now in the enterprise of restfulness. I'm the God of rest. I'm the God of the Sabbath. And we get to worship that exact same God. So we're called into that. That's the same God that we get to worship. And that's why I think this is so important for us to look through this and actually consider, what does God command us to rest? So if you're here last week, I talked about 3 things. And so it's just going to be the foundation that I have, and then we can actually jump into application. The first one is that God provides rest for us as hope in this world. God provides rest for us as a hope in this world. And the reason he does that is because the demands on your life are never ending. Are they not? There's always a to-do list. There's always more to get done. There's always more that will exhaust you. And so eventually there has to be a point where you rest. The only difference is that your never-ending list is going to be never-ending. God's never-ending list was done. He created everything in 6 days and then rested. He was done. He finished everything and then rested. He's the only person that gets to say that. We don't. And if God rests, how much more should we rest, given that we're finite and we can't do everything that God does? God created everything and still rested. We got a couple of things done on a checklist and we think we're awesome. We're called to rest as hope in a weary world. And it's for our health and for our joy. Number 2, Jesus is the truest Sabbath. The idea in the Old Testament was that there was going to be a day that was separate. It was holy, consecrated for God's people, the Israelites. And God would say, I rested on the 7th day, therefore you shall also rest on this 7th day. You shall cease from all of your work, you will worship me, and this will be for your joy. Come and be with me. Come and Sabbath with me. But then you go through the New Testament and you get this Jesus figure that shows up and basically is saying the exact same thing. Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest. It's the exact same phrase that God is calling the Israelites to. So in your mind, as quickly as I can, I want you to not just picture the Sabbath as a day, but as a person. The truest Sabbath is Jesus Christ, and he's the one who basically embodies the Sabbath and invites us to come and Sabbath with him, to be with him. Sabbath is not just a day, but it's also a person. So we come to God, we come to Jesus, and we rest with him, and that becomes our Sabbath. So it's not just a day. It can still be a day. You should still have a day. We'll talk about that. But your truest Sabbath is actually Jesus Christ, not just a day. And then lastly, resting is remembering. When we rest, we remember. And because our identity is so skewed in our culture right now of how busy we are and the things that we want to get done, we forget who we are and we forget who God is. We forget that our God is a God of liberation and redemption and reconciliation. And then what we do is we end up thinking like, we're not actually children of God. We're really busy. We need to do things. We need to produce. We need to earn some sort of approval or feel important. And we lose sight of who God is and who we are. And so the opportunity for us to be called into remembrance through the Passover for the Israelites and in communion now as New Testament believers. We're called to look at the meal that we're going to have later today, and it's going to symbolize the fact that God pulled you from darkness. Wherever you were, he instilled hope. Where there was no hope, brought you and gave you new life. And we're called to remember how dark it was, but not just how dark, but also how light. And how beautiful it is that God is the one who's reconciling all of creation to be under the rule and reign of Christ. That's remembrance. We need to take a step back and remember who is our God, who are we because of our God. That's how we begin to remember. And resting requires us to do this self-reflection all the time. Who is God? Who are we? Who are we? Who is God? All the time. So, we good? Amazing. All right, so a few of the questions that hang over this entire topic, which gets us right into the heart of application, is this. Why do we rest in the first place? And who cares? And if we do rest, how do we do it? How do we actually rest? Do we have to honor the Sabbath, aka the day, or are we free to be able to do whatever we want in terms of being able to rest? Because Jesus fulfilled the Old Testament law, we no longer have to have the specific day and follow the law. Which, by the way, do you know that most non-Christians think that the 10 Commandments is basically our path to salvation to God? That when we do our Sabbath on that fourth commandment about keeping the Sabbath, that if we don't and we're sitting there and we have built out this nice little sanctuary and like no technology and I'm out in nature and I see a tree and I'm just going to pray and meditate for like 16 straight hours. And if we don't do that, God's going to like zap us with lightning, and then we're going to be like blasted from the face of the earth. You realize that that's how some people think that our relationship with God works, right? That's not our relationship with God, is it? No. Our God is one who calls us into sweet fellowship with himself. Says, come child, stay a while. Come relax. Come spend time with me. Remember who I am. Remember who you are. You're a child. So come and spend time with me. I want to lavish you. That's our God. That's who we worship. And because Jesus fulfilled the law, we no longer have to keep the day. We get to have the day. We get to spend time with him. We get to set aside time that's consecrated only for him and say, this is your time, God. You do what you want with that time. Fill me up, revitalize me, refresh me. I need it. It's a very, very different relationship when we look at it as we get to participate in the day. So do you have to have the day? No, you don't have to have the day. Do you get to have the day? Absolutely. If you have the opportunity and flexibility to have a day alone with the Lord, do it. You might be asking, what does that look like? Perfect question. We are going to get there. So the text that I have, Jeremiah 6:16. Usually I love preaching through the whole text or a chapter. You give me like Old Testament or Romans, Galatians, Hebrews, something. I'll just preach that thing all day. Topical sermons aren't really my forte. They're not really the thing that I love the most. But I picked Jeremiah 6:16 because I thought it was a great way to kind of transition into the application. So if you have a Bible, grab that, or if you just want to look up on the screen or turn on your phone or whatever, do that. Swipe. Jeremiah 6:16. Thus says the Lord, stand by the roads and look and ask for the ancient paths, where the good way is, and walk in it, and find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk in it. So really short, one passage. And the idea here is that Jeremiah, Old Testament, is telling the nation of Israel essentially like, you are lost. You want to be found? Here's what you do. Stand by the road and look. where the good way is and walk in it. Look for the ancient paths. You know what that means? He is not asking them to innovate. He is not asking them to recreate. He is not asking them to invent a way to rest. He's calling them back to ancient ways, to the Sabbath, spending time with God. It's one of the things that they've abandoned. They've abandoned their God in multiple ways, but one of the ways they abandoned him was not spending time with him, not resting. And God says that when you find this path and you walk in it, there's rest for your soul. That sounds good, doesn't it? Rest for your soul. There's an ancient path. You no longer have to create your own path. You don't have to innovate. You don't have to invent. You don't have to create. You can follow what God's been doing for centuries, thousands of years, by simply walking with him, setting aside time and worshiping him, loving him, letting him love you. But they said, we will not walk in it, which I feel like is the right cultural motto of our day, especially in the American church, is that we will not walk in it. So now, with all of that, I want to mention one other thing is that I feel like that one of the reasons that we don't rest well is because we don't ever feel like we're done with work. And the reality is that we need to rest because we need to reflect on his work, not ours. Because your demands will always be there. There will always be more work for you to do. But because his work is finished, let's reflect on his work. Because if you wait until you're all finished with everything that you have to do, you'll never rest. You'll never rest. You'll never take time to step back. But if you reflect on his work, on Jesus' finished work on the cross, you will rest. Don't wait until you're finished. Stop and rest and be with your God. Now, I'm going to get heavy application. And I'm going to do it by talking kind of about some rhythms that I have. I asked a bunch of different people within the congregation and staff to kind of give me some feedback on, hey, how do you rest? How do you do this? And so I'm just going to throw a lot at you. Take notes as much as you want. If there's something in there that you're like, this doesn't make any sense, I don't think this fits, totally fine. This is more of a trial and error. Figure out what works for you. I'm just kind of giving you a framework of what might work to help you Sabbath, to help you rest. So if you're taking notes, if you want to write some of this down, great. If it doesn't fit, doesn't work, don't be upset or offended. You can come and talk to me afterwards about maybe how to structure something. But I'm just kind of giving you what I've experienced in my life, what I've read, and just kind of polling some people. So what I want to do first is working on rest in terms of time. So the way that I broke it down was years, months, weeks, and days. Is the way that I kind of broke it down. So I want to start with years. One of the things that I love to do is I like to take my entire years, and I've already done this, but I like to take my whole year. So 2019 is already mapped out. I have a really nice whiteboard in my apartment, and I mapped out the entire year, all 12 months. And I basically looked at it and I said, which months are going to be the most busy? Just based on how many things I have to do, what's going on, I looked the whole month and I say, okay, well, it seems like that the winter and the spring are going to be really busy, but it looks like summer might be a little bit more relaxed and then fall's right back, it's busy again. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I might want to plan some vacations, maybe early winter and kind of like midsummer, somewhere in there. I'm going to plan some vacations. And so what I'm doing is I'm looking at my whole year and saying, okay, God, where in this time would it be most effective for me to take a vacation? When can I set aside some Sabbath time? Without knowing every detail of the whole entire year, I'm still going to go ahead and pick some days. One of the things that I love to do 2 times a year is I love to go on a 3-day Sabbath retreat. I take 3 days, I don't take any electronics, I just go to a cabin out in the woods somewhere, and I do nothing but read and pray and reset and then look at my whole year or half year or whatever it is and just say, God, would you bless this year? Would you do something really, really awesome this year? What do you have for me this year? Who do I need to be pouring into? How can I cultivate my relationship with you? And maybe you have that opportunity. Maybe you have an opportunity to get away, maybe once, maybe even twice a year to take 3 days. I found that for me, I can't do those 24-hour things because as soon as I get there and I sit down, my mind's already thinking like, when am I going to leave again? Am I going back? When can I go back and start doing stuff again? I have to disconnect for 3 days. Maybe that's not, maybe you could do the 24 hours. Maybe you can do 2 days. Maybe you need a week. But looking at your schedule for a whole year and being able to pick out exactly what you need, picking out certain months where the things begin to lighten up and you think, yeah, maybe I can actually do that. Maybe I can take some time to actually set aside. Overall, I suggest looking at your year, 2019, and plan it out. Plan out vacations, times away. Pick 2 or 3 days where you barricade off and they're your Sabbath days and you truly set them apart for God. For monthly breakdown, there's 1 day a month where basically I basically try to like get away from everybody and everything. Usually I go to Grit Coffee, shout out to Grit, and basically I sit down with a paper Bible and a journal, no electronics again, and what I do is I started off by praying, and I try to do like a 9 to 5, so like a full work day, and I just sit there and I pray for everyone that I can think of. I pray for every country, every disease that I want to go away, the ones that I can pronounce, and then like anything I can think of, I just start praying for, and once I'm done, I'm exhausted. I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, okay, I just prayed for a lot of things, and I look at my watch, and I'm like, oh, that was only 20 minutes. Oh, how long? There's so much time left. What am I going to do? And I literally have to sit there, and I just ask God, I'm like, can you just show up and do something? Because I'm bored out of my mind. And then I wait on God, and it's in that stillness, once I've exhausted everything I can want to pray for and everything that I'm asking him to do, that's when he shows up. And he shows up in super profound ways. He shows up and he speaks tenderly to me. He reminds me who I am. I remember who he is. And it's so helpful to just be away from all electronics and distractions and be in that maybe you can't do that at a coffee shop. Maybe you have to be at home for that. For me, I love being around people. I don't like being super secluded all the time, which is why silence and solitude is hard for me. But I love being in a coffee shop and having that. And then once I'm done at the coffee shop, I'll go for a walk or I'll go for a hike or something. But I keep the day basically structured around, God, this is your day. And I try to do that at least once a month. Sometimes I do it on bike. Sometimes I go other places or I'll drive to another location. But I try to set aside at least one day. For monthly rest, notice which weeks in the month tend to be busier. And keep an eye on your schedule and see how things fluctuate. I don't have a job where it fluctuates week to week, where it's like 1 week is really busy, the next week is kind of not so, and then the next one's busy, the next one's not. I don't really have that. It's pretty consistent from week to week. Maybe yours isn't like that. So maybe when you start to think about like, yeah, I'd love to put one day on the calendar where I can rest, I can spend some time. It doesn't have to be 8 hours. It could be even 2 hours. But when you do that, plan it around maybe one of those weeks where you don't have a lot going on. So it doesn't become so demanding after a long week. You're like, the last thing you want to do is just like, oh, I don't want to have to go and do this thing where I have nothing to do except read my Bible and pray for all these diseases. Like, I don't want to do, you don't have to do that, by the way. It's just something that I do. But like, you want to spend that time actually dedicated to God. And so which weeks work best for you? How do you want to structure your month? Can you pick a day? Can you pick 2 days where you can just get away? Next is the weekly breakdown. I try to protect my weekends as tightly as I can. My weekends are Friday, Saturday, not Saturday, Sunday, because obviously this is work right now. And so I don't get to have this day off. And so what I do is at Thursday at 5 p.m., my phone goes on Do Not Disturb. And so does my Slack and my email. Basically, all of that doesn't go to my phone. If I want to check it, I actually have to manually go in and check my email, check my Slack, check whatever it is, and actually look at my notifications. And I do that to protect my Fridays, because my Fridays are when I wake up, and all of you are all at work, and I get to wake up and have my day because none of you are available to hang out with me, so I basically have to spend that time by myself. And I wake up, and I begin to clean my apartment, and I put things away, and then once everything is cleaned and put away and my laundry is done, I sit down and I read. And I get time alone just with God. I protect that time because that time for me is so special to be able to be alone with God and read something. And I love that, but it's only half of a day because about 4 o'clock, everything's been done, my week's been planned, I'm kind of exhausted being alone, and so I start to get hungry for human interaction, and then I try to go and hang out with people and bother them at work because I don't know what else I'm going to do. But I try to protect that half day. The other half of the day I use on Monday mornings. So tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm probably going to be at home, and I'm going to read for a couple of hours by myself. No other distractions, phone's going to remain on silent, and then after a little bit, I'm going to get up, shower, come here, work for a little bit, and then go home and sleep. But I barricade off my weekends to protect those days because Saturday's my fun day. Saturday's the day where I go, I travel, I have fun, I go places, and I just enjoy Charlottesville. Because Sunday, I don't really get to do that. Maybe towards the evening, if we have Connect, I don't really get that opportunity either. So Saturday has to be my day. And I protect that Saturday and make sure that I don't do anything on Saturday because otherwise I will be exhausted by the time Sunday rolls around. And that doesn't serve you best. It doesn't serve anybody best if I'm exhausted and coming in. So I try to protect my weekends as much as I can. I need also a few hours away from my apartment. I realize that sometimes my Sabbath cannot happen at my apartment because I get so distracted with everything in my apartment, all of my lights and everything. I have this thing where I want to move my furniture every couple weeks. Does anybody else have that? No? Am I really the only one? No, okay, Donna, thank you. I want to move my furniture all the time. I'm sitting there, I'm like, nah, we could do this better. How are we going to, and then I start thinking HGTV. I'm like, let's knock that wall out and let's get some more natural sunlight. I need that. I have to leave my apartment to go and actually be alone and actually Sabbath with God. I can't do it in my apartment. There's like a 40-minute window where I can be at my apartment and everything's like serene and perfect, and you like see me sitting with like a cup of coffee, like slowly turning my Bible, and like everything's amazing. And that only lasts 40 minutes. And then after that, I'm like, man, I just want to like get a sledgehammer, take out that wall, replace that bathroom, let's do more tile. I have to leave. And so it's something I've recognized being here. I thought apartment's going to be my place for Sabbath. Nope. I have to go somewhere else. So I literally have to go to other coffee shops or other places to find Sabbath. Maybe for you, you love home, and home can be your place for Sabbath. For me, I can't do that. But I would encourage you, where is your place for Sabbath? Can it be home? Can it be a room in your home? Is it a closet? If you just barricade yourself in there and just pray all the time, great, do that. But where can you be alone? Where can you Sabbath? Next is days, the day breakdown. So beginning and ending your day with God. How many of you are morning people? That's what I expected. I was going to say, if you're a morning person, you probably came to the 9. How many of you are night owls? Some of you? Okay. How many of you don't care? Some of you. And how many of you still hate raising your hands at church? Yeah, a couple of you, that's what I thought. One of the things I do, I love getting up super early. I love getting up at like 5:15, 5:30, and getting up and either working out or having a cup of coffee. There's a morning person that just clapped. Who was that? Melissa. I love getting up super early and reading or working out or doing something early in the morning. Like, that's my time to be with God. I love that. For you night owls, that probably sounds like the worst thing in the world. And so here's kind of where it deviates and where I want to encourage you. That may not work for you. For me, that's what I need. That's my time with God. I start my day with God. I start by either working out and listening to a sermon or a podcast or music, or I wake up and I page through my Bible. I read my daily plan, I read a book or whatever, and that's how I can start my day with God. I have to do that. I have to order my inner world with God before I can approach everything else that's going on outside of me. It's the only way that I can do it. And so I've had to discipline myself to get up early. Now I love it. I used to hate it, but now I love it. That may not work for you, so try it. What might work? One of the other things that I found is that if I am up late the night before, I know I'm going to get up really early and I'm going to read or something. If I'm up until like midnight or 1 a.m. and I go to bed, one of the most unhelpful things for me to do is actually keep my routine and wake up at 5:15, 5:30. Because what ends up happening is I get up and I'm grouchy, I'm hangry. Even though I've already eaten, I'm still hangry. I'm really short with people, I'm unfocused, I'm really scatterbrained, I'm skeptical, and super selfish. Nobody wants to hang out with that guy, right? No one wants to hang out with that guy. So the most loving thing that I can do for everybody else around me is to forego waking up at 5:15 and sleep through my alarm. Get up about 8 o'clock, shower, and come to work. Move my devotional towards lunch, move my time to work out maybe towards the end of the day, and go about my day. Why? Because I'm not going to put that on the people that are around me and have them bear the burden of my foolishness of waking up that early. And you may think like, oh, that's crazy. You're not going to read the Bible in the morning? Yes. At the expense of making other people uncomfortable and not allowing them to feel loved by me because I was foolish with my care? Absolutely not. I'm going to sleep, I'm going to rest, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to be the best version of me that I can be for the congregation, for you, for the people of Charlottesville. And so if that means that I have to skip it and move my devotional to lunchtime, I'm doing it. And that works for me. Maybe that doesn't work. Maybe you're the person who can like do 2 hours of sleep and you wake up and you're like, good morning. If that's you, keep doing that. Like, that's amazing. Teach me how. I can't do that. I get 3 hours of sleep. I'm a zombie the whole day. It's miserable. But for me, I know that the most loving thing I can do, as I've kind of seen my patterns, is if I'm up late, I'm not getting up early. I'm going to sleep in. And then I'm going to move my devotional and put it towards another part of the day. So another thing I like to do is I love using transitions for prayer. And this may not sound like Sabbath, but I promise you it is. These kind of micro Sabbaths. If I'm driving from one place to another, between lunches, between meetings, if I'm going to meet somebody somewhere, I use that travel time as a chance to Sabbath. And what that looks like is me praying for the person, asking God to bless the conversation, anoint whatever's going to happen there, ask for wisdom, ask for power, and just use that time to say, God, would you align my heart with you so I can see clearly, I can see where you're moving, show us your glory, give me wisdom, discernment. You are powerful, you're in control. Thank you for the cross. And even in that, even if it's 30 seconds walking from my office to Justin's office or from my office out to the lobby, it works and it's so helpful. If you've ever tried this, it's incredibly helpful. Look at natural transitions in your day, whether it's to work, from work, in between meetings. Are there opportunities in transition in your day where you can kind of plant these micro Sabbaths here and there, where you stop and you pray? Maybe you open up and you just read a psalm before you eat lunch. Maybe you read part of a book. Maybe you read your devotional at lunch. Maybe that's your mini Sabbath. But we have these natural transitions, these kind of downtimes where we can begin to use these as small Sabbaths with God. It takes the burden off of thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to put a whole day aside. It's like, sort of, but at the same time, you can do these little Sabbaths here and there so that way when you come to that day, you're not completely exhausted going, I need this so badly. You come in going, gosh, I'm really excited. I feel rested, but I'm even more excited to spend more time with God. It could be beneficial. For me, that's something that works. Maybe for you, that doesn't work. I found that it's incredibly helpful. Taking those stray minutes here and there to recalibrate our spiritual lives. So the best thing that I could say about time, kind of to wrap up time, the best way to look at time, I think, is to plan ahead. To look at your days, your weeks, your months, your years, and just plan out when are you going to do this. Because honestly, Sabbath and rest are not just going to magically appear on your calendar. They don't for me. I have to schedule them in. If I wait until everything's kind of done and completed and then I'll schedule my Sabbath, it will never happen. I have to plan it in the midst of all the chaos, amidst the brokenness, amidst all the things going on in my life. I have to plan it. I have to set it aside. It needs to be protected. Because if I don't do that, it will not happen. And in your life, I'm guessing it's the same way. It won't happen unless you plan it. So my biggest encouragement is when you consider time and Sabbath, plan it. Plan ahead. Write it in your calendar. Write it in and set that time aside for God and be excited. Be excited for what God might do in that time. And ultimately, really what it comes down to then is figuring out the next kind of section that I want to walk through, which is physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, relational, and technological rest. I'm going to walk through these pretty quickly. So physical rest, exercising. Do you use exercise or your exercising or exerting of stress to actually worship God? Do you exercise and use that time to pray for people? Do you use that time to listen to sermons? Do you use that time to listen to audiobooks? Are you using that time for Him? How do you sleep? Are you aiming for 7 to 9 hours of sleep? Could that be a way that you strive to Sabbath and rest better? Do you use your Sabbaths actually as like naps? Like naps can be Sabbathing. Do you think about it? Spending time. Sometimes the most loving thing that you can do both to your God and to the people around you is to take a nap. It's true. It can sometimes be the most loving thing that you can do is to sleep and eat a good meal. Diet. Do you eat well? I know this one seems ridiculous, but there's plenty of accounts of early church fathers and other theologians that literally will schedule their meals out and avoid certain foods so that way they don't become grouchy and crash, like sugar crash later. Like for me, I love Sour Patch Kids, and what I realized is that I cannot eat Sour Patch Kids here at work because when I do, I get this crash about 3 o'clock and then I down like 4 cups of coffee because I'm so exhausted and I'm up until like 11:45 at night, and I hate that. So I've just decided no more Sour Patch Kids. As much as I love Sour Patch Kids, I can't do it because it makes me grouchy and hangry. And then I drink way too much coffee, I get jittery, and then I'm awake for like the next 27 days. Sometimes eating a good meal and going for a walk to gaze upon creation is what we need. Do you do that? Emotional. Do you practice solitude? Emotional health is a really great way to hit a reset. So being alone, being truly alone for a set amount of time. Sometimes what I do is if I'm feeling stressed out or I just need to be alone, but my apartment's just distracting because I want to knock walls down, what I'll do is I'll go downstairs and I'll literally just do a loop around my apartment complex and come back upstairs. It takes about 20 minutes. It's so refreshing to be outside, go for a walk, and come back upstairs. And sometimes that's all I need. Sometimes that resets me enough where I'm like, that was awesome, God, thank you. That was a really good time to spend with you. And it's just 20 minutes, but it's incredibly helpful. Community, do you utilize the people in your life at Portico for emotional Sabbathing? This could look like having a few people to help you walk through your emotional ups and downs. This could look like asking someone to keep you accountable. How many of you journal? Oh, a few of you? How many of you really want to start journaling or have had a desire to journal? Like 2 people. How many of you hate journaling? And how many of you still don't like raising your hands at church? Yeah, a couple of you. I found in time of my ministry, even with myself, journaling not just as writing down prayers or Bible verses or whatever, or ideas, but it begins to become a kind of emotional reflection almost, writing down emotions, writing down my day. And it can feel a little bit like a middle school journal, like a middle school diary. Like, dear diary, today I felt sad. But for me, it's really been helpful to go back over the last couple of years and reread some of my journals and see sort of some of the emotional patterns that I go through the seasons. Recognizing one of the things I found out was when it comes to winter, I tend to be a little bit more sad. With the changing of the seasons, with things being a little bit more gray and less sunny, I tend to struggle a little bit more with the winter. And so one of the things I noticed is like, okay, I need to plan more Sabbath time around the winter because then I can be alone with God, and that helps me recenter. So then when I go back into social situations, I'm not exhausted. I'm not tired. I'm not running on empty anymore. I'm actually running on God. And it helps me a little bit. Mentally, doing mental activities that are not related to your work but are life-giving. I love writing and composing music, and I'm not super great at it, but it's enough of a degree of separation from my work here with Bible and teaching and event planning or whatever that I get to just dig in and compose music and have to just check out from everything that I do here. And it's so helpful, it's so because it's challenging, but yet it doesn't exhaust me because I love it. Are there activities that you can do that aren't taxing but actually life-giving? Maybe for you, this means reading something that isn't your Bible. How much have you read that isn't for study or personal growth, but for fun? How much, if it isn't even Christian related, what if it's just a good novel or an article about a hobby that you like? One of the other things I have in here is don't multitask. I'm really bad at this. I love to try to multitask and do like 1,000 things. And I've had other people keep me accountable and say, just pick one thing and focus on it. You love people better when you can focus on one thing. And you actually honor God better when you can only focus on one thing and pour everything into that one thing. I can't multitask. The other thing on here I have is working on saying no, even to good things. That's a hard one for us. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to say no for all time. It just means maybe in this season you say no to really good things. Relationally, spouses, do you set up enough time for the other to actually Sabbath? Does one of you take the kids or the chores, the extra duties in a day and allow the other to go and rest? Husbands, do you provide everything your wife needs to Sabbath well? Does she have the resources, the time, and the encouragement from you to know that she can go and rest? Wives, do you also do the same for your husband? Do you have the ability to know when the other is needing rest and say, hey, I would like to bless you with a few hours, maybe a day, or a couple of minutes to go and spend time alone with God? What do I need to do to make that happen? Spouses, have you taken a retreat together or stopped the cycle of busy in your life to slow down and focus, even for a day or a couple hours, on how to encourage each other to say thank you and how to be grateful and work on your marriage? How about date night? Do you have a day that you set aside specifically for date night, even in the midst of all the busyness? How about solitude? Have you gotten away from all people? Have you had a day or two? College students, one of the things I did when I was in college was I would barricade myself in my room and I would get all the food that I needed for the whole day, all the blankets, everything, candles, whatever I needed for the whole day, and I would just sit for 12 hours and I would just read my Bible and watch sermons all day. And it was awesome. It was the most revitalizing thing I could do while I was in college. And I did that about once a semester or so. And I recognized because I didn't have a car, I couldn't go anywhere, so I was kind of stranded at the house that I was living in. If you're a college student and you want to get away and you want to rest, but you don't have the availability or the space to go and do it, please come and talk to me. I will help you set up a time and a place for Sabbath. I'll even bring you food and I'll drive you somewhere. I'll be your personal chauffeur. I'm serious. I will actually help you do this because I believe that rest is so important. So if you're exhausted and you need time to rest, please contact me. I would love to help you figure out a Sabbath day. And I'll bring you all the stuff that you need. I'll bring you books, food, balloons. I don't care. Whatever helps you rest. Maybe like a get well soon balloon. It's just like, eh. Technology. Do you have a do not disturb time? Is there a place where you shut down your emails, text messages, and phone calls and you actually can be present with the people around you? Or even just yourself? One of the things that I figured out that I have to do, and I keep myself accountable on this, and other people do too, is that I can't have more than one screen in front of me. So if my TV is on and I have my laptop, one of those has to go. If I have my phone and my iPad, one of those has to go. If I have my computer and whatever else going, one of those has to go. It can only be one screen at a time. And it keeps me focused on the thing that's in front of me rather than being distracted with like a million different screens and notifications popping up about Instagram and Facebook everywhere. I need to focus on one thing at a time. So, where do we go from here? I want to challenge you this week and this month to give this year over to the practice of rest, even if you leave the time with God feeling normal. You will reap far more than you believe when you seek God in these things, to do extraordinary things in the ordinary things, in the ordinary means. To breathe the air of eternity, we have to stop and be still. And it may not always feel like heaven. It may feel ordinary, but God is at work in the ordinary and the chaos and the mess and the brokenness. Struggle well to rest well. We know we aren't the people we want to be. We still sin. We still hurt. We're still busy. But Jesus was enough for 2018, and Jesus will be enough for 2019. My encouragement to you is to practice rest. If there's things here that you have more questions about, I know that I flew through all those things. Please come and talk to me after. I would love to give you recommendations about books, places, whatever resource I can. I would love to help you in that. But for now, let's pray. God, I pray that you would do a work in all of us as we thank you so much for this time to be together. I pray that you would do a work and you would move certain people, or all of us really, and ask the question, God, how do you want me to Sabbath this year? How can we make 2019 a year for you? God, silently, would you whisper to us about how we can rest? Lord, we admit that we're weary and tired and we prefer many things over you, but it's such a good day to come back. God, would you do a profound work in our hearts and allow us to be able to rest in the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross and be able to rest well as new creations. It's in your beautiful name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Let's stand together and sing a song of response.
appreciate your prayers as I prep that. Especially Philippians 2, 1 through 11. It's about the best thing you'll ever read ever in your entire life. You can just read that for 100 years and be blessed every day with something new. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's my way of saying I'm not being lazy and taking days off. I'm trying to prep that, but would you please pray for me in that? We're going to do our offering, and before the team comes, I want us to think about something. I was thinking about offering this week, and I thought about the Hebrews, the Israelites, and it struck me that they were a slave people in Egypt. They had nothing. God rescues them out, plunders the Egyptians, gives them some of their gold and silver, and then immediately takes it back by instituting tithes and offerings. Isn't that sort of weird? Hey, you've had nothing. Here it is. Now give it back to me. What are you trying to do? What's God trying to do? The only sense I can make out of it is that it's good for them. If you read the Ten Commandments, you say, well, there's no tithing in the Ten Commandments. No, you just have to read a little bit further. And God mentions it almost casually as if he's already told them about it. And then 2 chapters later, he reminds them, don't forget about the tithes and offerings. You know, when we provide for ourselves, it sort of feels good, but it reinforces pride. When God provides for us, it reinforces love. He loves us, cares for us. And man, we'd rather choose self-provision. We'd rather pat ourselves on the back. But it's better to obey. When you add up, by the way, the people of God, the Hebrews, and all that they were called on to give, tithing and the offerings, it went well over 20%. He really wanted them to part from their own provision so that he could create a culture of people around generosity and dependence. Now, if a slave people who had nothing needed that, a consuming and materialistic culture like ours really needs it. Would you just sort of pray over that and ponder that as the team now comes and gives us an opportunity to obey, to worship, to discipline ourselves, because we don't see the benefit immediately. But I promise you, God has it for us through his Spirit. We're also going to take the Lord's Supper together today, and I'm just in the very beginning of a book on the crucifixion, and Fleming Rutledge wrote this book on the crucifixion, and she reminded me of something I hadn't thought about, again, in a while, and that is that in the ancient Near East, the idea of a God dying is not particularly unusual. But the idea of a God dying in such humiliating, embarrassing fashion is entirely radical, revolutionary, and highly unusual. We're going to take the Lord's Supper, and I'm going to read to you from Luke chapter 22. You've heard this before. Go ahead. I wish I could say I had it memorized. And he took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And likewise the cup after that, after they had eaten, saying, "This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." That must have been really weird. Imagine Passover, the meal, they're celebrating, they're enjoying one another's company. And then Jesus turns the meal back to a covenant promise. I'm going to save you by dying for you. But I wonder even at that moment if they couldn't have really known how humiliating and embarrassing that would be. So what? What we're about to do as we take the body, as we drink the cup, is to remember how far Jesus was willing to go. Of course, that's not the only thing we get from the crucifixion, but it's a big thing. God in human form entering into our world to take our place, to bear our suffering, to take our sin, to reconcile us to God, to provide forgiveness. Let's remember that. In a sense, what Jesus was doing is making marriage vows to save his people that he would never break. And in a sense, what we're doing is we're reflecting on those and renewing our vows. I will walk, Jesus, with the cross at the center of my life. God saves sinners like me through the person and work of his perfect Son. Though he knew no sin, became sin and died in my place, that I can be made right with God. This is good news. Let's take and eat as the Lord leads you and remember what he's done for you. Father God, you are so good. You're so good. You're so good. Your grace is sufficient. Your mercy is unbelievable. We thank you, Father God, for sending your Son to die in our place, that we may be made right and join the family of God. Holy Spirit, I pray that you would move in us in a profound way, that we might really enter in close to you even now, connecting with your sacrifice on our behalf, that we might truly, deeply resonate and worship you and appreciate and be grateful and give thanks that you save us completely through the work of Jesus. In whose name we pray. Amen.
Amen. We're going to continue singing, but feel free to stand whenever you're ready.
flower of Christ in me, from life's first breath.
I find my strength, I find my hope, I find my help in Christ alone. When fear assails, when darkness falls, I find my peace in Christ alone. I find my strength, I find my hope, I find my help in Christ alone. When fear assails, when darkness falls, I find my peace in Christ alone.
I see your face in every sunrise. The colors of the morning are inside your eyes. The world awakens in the light of the day. I look up to the sky and say, you're beautiful. I see your power in the moonlit at night, where planets are in motion and galaxies are bright. We are amazed in the light of the stars. It's all proclaiming who you are. You're beautiful. I see you there hanging on a tree. You bled and then you died and then you rose again for me. Now you are sitting on your heavenly throne, and soon you will come home. You're beautiful.
stretch our hands for the benediction. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance to you and give you peace. Amen. Have a great Sunday.